Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 15th of May 2017. I'm Joe, and with me are Jesse.
I'm late.
Phelim.
I'm on time.
And Ike.
I'm pre.
We're not going for the Late Night Linux hat trick then? Okay, too much clearly. However, I think maybe we should start off with a little bit of what have you been up to for the last fortnight. Me, not a lot. Phelim, not much, fair enough. Ike, not so much. Joe, what have you been doing over the last fortnight? Any podcasts you've been involved with?
Yes, I may have started a new podcast with Chris from Jupiter Broadcasting called Linux Action News at linuxactionnews.com.
And what's that about?
It's about abstract French art, mostly.
The clue is in the name.
All right, well, without further ado, should we do our own news?
Yeah, let's do our own version of it, our own less organized version. So let's start with Canonical are looking to IPO, so they're going to go public, or at least that is the plan. And Shuttleworth came out with this in an interview at the OpenStack Summit. Not a huge surprise, is it? We've been speculating this for a while, and now he's just come out and said it.
I have my surprised face on.
I detect a hint of sarcasm there, Ike.
Yeah, very well put, Joe. I don't really want to play up on the whole thing, but it's kind of obvious. Did see it coming, fattening off the cow, trimming off the bits that they don't want. What's the businessy way of putting this here, slimming the business portfolio. The signs are kind of there. I mean, anything's going to be a surprise nowadays with them? Not really.
But there was another article that someone wrote sort of looking at the overall picture of Canonical and sort of where they've come from and how this news panned out. And just one of the things that sort of sprung out to me was Unity has been going for 6 years and the convergent plan has been going for probably almost all that time, if not slightly shorter. And he sort of said, that means there's thousands of man hours and probably millions of pounds. And you just realise what a large sum of money, Shuttleworth has put of his own money into this. And, at some point, you do think it's going to have to get to a point where he thinks, well, we have to focus on what's going to make us money and make a return on it rather than just pouring all into this potentially bottomless hole. It's just a bit heartbreaking that it means that we lose what is a very popular desktop environment and the whole plan for the convergent phone, which obviously, as nerds, we're a bit disappointed about.
Oh yeah, my heart bleeds for the death of Unity. Yeah.
Well, not you necessarily, but there are lots and lots of people who download Ubuntu and run it, and it runs absolutely fine.
On the plus side, a pound isn't worth anything anymore, so it's not that much.
But I watched this interview in full at the OpenStack Summit, and you could just see that he's almost like dead behind the eyes now, Shuttleworth. It's like all his passion has gone. And okay, he's still a good businessman. He's still good at being interviewed and stuff, but you can just tell there's something different about him now. There used to be this real spring in his step, this real sparkle in his eye, that he wanted to be the free software Steve Jobs, which arguably he is. But I genuinely believe that he was really focused on pushing free software and open source to the masses, and he wanted to make it a really viable platform for people. And he had this huge dream of convergence and everything. And now he's just realized that was fucking ridiculous, and he has to just cut his losses. It was just never going to happen, was it? And so now he's got all the boring stuff like OpenStack and, all the boring shit like servers and virtualization, which, okay, you need to run all of the stuff that we've got, with mobile and edge devices. But maybe I'm just reading it wrong. Maybe I'm projecting my own feelings onto him, but I don't know, am I alone in getting that feeling that he's just given up now and he's just kind of tidying up shop so he can offload it and do something else?
It's good to know that my entire career has been based on boringness, and you've just thrown it aside, and now Shuttleworth wants to top himself.
Well, it's not that exciting, is it? I mean, it's critical infrastructure for a lot of people.
It's very exciting. Jesus.
All right, well, I sit corrected.
No, you can see where I would imagine an awful lot of that is possibly down to the toll of seeing people that he's worked with getting axed. People who say, oh, he's a cold-hearted bastard, whatever. I'm sure the guy's human, and I'm sure watching all those people leave is just not even remotely nice to do. Even though you know you have to do it, you obviously realize that funds versus time, it's just not working. So it's got to take a toll. Mentally, the stress must be fairly awful. I mean, yeah, obviously the people who've been canned, it's even worse because they don't have a paycheck coming in. But it's gonna tell on you, I think.
Yeah, like this idea that they were a family before. That Tech Radar article talks about that. It was like this free software family, not even like a real business. Whereas now he is making it into just a standard big tech business. And yeah, he felt that family feeling came from the top, presumably. I mean, I've never met the fella, but my understanding of it is that there was a great warmth between him and all the employees, and there still is. But like now he's having to distance himself. And so, yeah, I can see that he would feel really fucking bad for firing a load of people.
I mean, this is effectively, if you like, the industrialization of Canonical. Because for years, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they've been kind of like a hippie company, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
They had a lot of money behind them, and part of it was dream chasing and dream enabling, which a lot of people loved. But this goes beyond just dropping the desktop. It's not like looked at the books and said, lads, we can't do this anymore. It's completely pull out of the desktop. And the problem that I see there is a lot of people know and themselves love Ubuntu because they started with it on the desktop. When they're administering their servers, they're using Ubuntu desktops and Ubuntu servers to do this. Now the whole desktop side is gone. The mobile side has gone. What some people would argue as their innovative edge has gone. And
well, the desktop hasn't gone, has it? I mean, you're still going to have an Ubuntu desktop.
Well, no, I mean, it still exists on the server side, but, you know, people are going to view it the same way that you're looking at it, that it's boring. You can have innovation on the server side, obviously, but it's not going to be sexy to those people. But what I'm seeing is, I mean, this is just my interpretation of it, but this is all about money. Every last bit of this is about money. You know, they're, like you say, a proper company now.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. But then this is a perfect time to do it. You know, just what you're saying, where people who have got into open source and, you know, Ubuntu is the number one name and they've got used to it. And then it's a case of, well, now we need to do it on the server. I'm familiar with Ubuntu, so I can continue, you know, doing the command line over the server and what have you. So people who have learnt their trade on Ubuntu have just carried that over to the server, hence why it's the most popular on Amazon and what have you. This is the time to do it when that is still a thing and people are doing that before someone else, you know, starts to overtake them or overlap, and they can make the money now and, you would think, become even more ingrained and the number one distribution to go for. Disappointing that they're not so interested in the desktop, but I also agree with Joe that I don't think they're pulling out the desktop as such. It's just taking away all the money they've put on the desktop environment, but obviously keeping the desktop going because it's the gateway, isn't it, for people to be using their distribution.
Well, Shuttleworth said in that same interview something along the lines of the desktop is still really important to us, and there was an OMG Ubuntu article about it, but I'm just not having that, really. I mean, you're not going to just abandon your whole desktop thing and go with GNOME if it's really important to you.
Well, the book balancing, and a lot of the desktop teams are gone, and obviously, you know, we feel sorry for those guys because they've done a lot of great work over the years. But having a desktop is a lot more than just having that desktop environment you create. There is that support around it, there is the testing around it, there is the enabling around it. You know, making sure all of the application integrate, that requires a team of people to be doing those. You can't just take stock upstream GNOME and add that stuff in. And for it to be what it's been over the few years, it has to go above and beyond just repackaging upstream vanilla software. And that's what they've been doing because it goes beyond what they've been doing with Unity. But there's no mention if that stuff's going to continue or not, and I can't really see it. Because they're effectively swapping out the primary desktop distribution for Ubuntu GNOME, right? That's now going to be their primary, as opposed to, you know, it's with the GNOME desktop. It's effectively swapping the face of the desktop distro.
Well, yeah, it's basically standard Ubuntu is going away and Ubuntu GNOME is being promoted.
So they're replacing the default one, but you just haven't got the... I mean, how many desktop staff they actually got still?
I don't know.
Because it's going to be nowhere near, not even a percentage of what they had before. And you're not going to get that investment before because they've shown they don't want to spend the money on the desktop, which therefore means they're not going to pay anyone beyond supporting the stuff that they already have out in LTS, which is keeping the Unity packages in the repos and other little bits and pieces around that relating to branding and that. But they're not going to put the money into it. So they're not going to pay anyone to do anything on the desktop beyond their support requirements for the LTS releases. So you may say that they haven't pulled out the desktop. They've definitely pulled their investment out of the desktop, and it was their investment that mattered.
You talked about how it's more than just grabbing upstream GNOME and chucking it out and all the testing and stuff. Surely that's what Ubuntu GNOME, that team who have been working for free, have been doing. And so Canonical can just use their slave labor effectively.
Well, if that was the case, then Ubuntu GNOME or any one of the derivatives would have taken over the official edition of Ubuntu years ago if it didn't require their investment and backing for the primary edition, because it would have already surpassed it in quality and popularity, but they didn't. So you've answered your own question, I think.
Well, I don't know. I think that Ubuntu Mate, for example, is very popular, but it's not the default. No. And same with Ubuntu GNOME, it's very popular, and most of the flavors are, I think. But if you go to Ubuntu, you know, you've just heard about Linux, you've just heard about Ubuntu. You type into Google Ubuntu, you just download the standard default one, right? And therefore, if Ubuntu GNOME is the default one, it's going to just instantly be popular. Instantly more popular than being a discrete flavor.
Yeah, but I mean, you could do that for anything. You know, if you swap out, it's like if I go to a shop and I get let's say it's an unbranded sports drink, right? We won't go with brand names. If I'm behind the counter swapping it out for something else, as far as you're concerned, you've bought the same product until you get home. And then you've been sold something else. So you can do that with anything. That just because it becomes instantly more popular, not necessarily. It's just had more downloads because people wouldn't have known either way. I know that we're still going to have the desktop image. That's abundantly clear. But it demotes the status of their desktop edition to effectively a derivative. Because while it might be the official primary one, the current one that exists is a community spin. It is a derivative of Ubuntu. Therefore, the primary edition going forward, given it will have no further backing from Canonical, holds, in my eyes, the same status as the other ones that are out there, the other derivatives. That part doesn't change. Now, if we're going to talk about fighting it out on the value and worth of the thing, and this is not me insulting any of the projects, but had any of them became more popular and surpassed them in quality, the mainstream Linux users and people going to download them would already have gone for the alternatives instead of going for the main Ubuntu one, because it would already have outdone them. They haven't done that. People went for the main Ubuntu one because that was the version of Ubuntu they wanted. So if Ubuntu GNOME was, quote, better than the one that's already out there, then people would be downloading that one, because that's how popularity works, not by swapping it out of the source, but by competing in the market. And the derivatives do, in a way, compete with each other for popularity and user base.
Who's saying that Canonical aren't going to be supporting the main desktop environment now that it's GNOME, and it's going to be...
to the level that they have been before.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure you're going to correct me, but I want Phelim and Joe to come in on this first. As far as I'm concerned, I see the Ubuntu derivatives or flavors, as Ubuntu with the desktop environment stripped out and a new one put in on top. Is that how you see it, Joe, Phelim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that too.
And so this whole discussion about the fact that one would overtake the main distribution and what have you, they're the same base. It's just the front looks different.
Yeah, I take the opposite. I think that this... not of you, but of what IQ was saying, I think this is a good thing in a certain sense, because while Unity was a big investment, it was a big investment that was on its own as an island, as opposed to, you know, what open source is meant to be, and that's other people combining from all different places to work together. Now, that's a bit peace pipey, but I think it would be better if they can put a certain amount of effort into it, like the QA work, and test on the upstream stuff as much as I can, and keeping it as upstream as I can do it, and actually making it as reliable as we would come to expect from it. I think that's a better way of doing it than having to go off with your own X server and, your own interface and your convergence and all that. You're wasting time, I think, with an awful lot of that stuff. If you can get back to working with everybody else, I think it's a good thing.
Okay, I do think you're kind of missing the point with that. Like, I know that Unity, the way that they implemented it, yes, it was bad, right? Don't get me wrong on that one. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the resulting software itself. Again, I'm talking about the investment. So they're not transferring those investments and those energies into the new edition. They're not. We know that because they've had a massive reduction in staff. That's not going to be happening. They're balancing the books and they're concentrating on the server and IoT. This much we already know. If they were transferring efforts on the desktop equally or to some significant portion of to support GNOME, then I would agree with what you're saying. I'm not going to agree with what you're saying because the fact is they've pulled all of that investment out and are no longer investing into the desktop stack. Instead, they're, if you like, merging with the free teams that are already out there. So that is a massive reduction in investment. It's not about what the resultant software is, it's the investment and commitment that's come through it. The fiscal motivation behind it is gone. And that's the bit I have the problem with.
But I don't think you can say so decisively that they've removed the entire desktop team. They've removed a lot of people from convergence because no more.
Oh, I'm not saying they've removed everyone, obviously not.
They've removed everyone from the desktop environment because Unity is no more. But you can't just say they've removed 90% of the people from the desktop workforce.
And I didn't give a figure.
You didn't give a figure, but the implication that you're implying that they were getting rid of nearly everyone. And I think they've only got rid of, the stream that was doing Convergent, the stream that was doing Unity, and the way that I'm arguing it sounds like Phelim is sort of hopes it is, or believes, from my point of view, believe it is. They've got the people who are doing the core work on the desktop, things like the delivering software, things like how you do the update mechanism, making sure the LTS is supported, those sorts of things that will require the same number of people. I have assumed, with no knowledge or numbers whatsoever, but nor do you have any, that they've kept that core set of people for the underlying distribution.
No, I mean that stuff there is shared between all of the Ubuntus. But that's not for the desktop stuff. I'm talking about the desktop stuff itself, right? Now, I hope to be wrong. Obviously, I hope to be wrong on this because I want to still see continued competition between all of the projects on the desktop. But to say that because they have some people doing stuff in the core of it, then that also translates into man hours on the desktop, that's not accurate. That is in no way accurate. Because those people working on the core stuff, that's justified money. Because that's going to be enabling server and IoT. It's going to go to money for things like snaps. That's going to go to supporting the LTS editions for the paying customers for the older versions of it, and more specifically on the server stuff. That then can't be directly applied because it's there. Well, they must also be working on all the GNOME packages. It's not quite the same thing. They're not going to completely pull out, don't get me wrong. They're still going to have some people working in desktop. That much is clear. But what I'm saying is if you look at the raw fact of it, there are less people in the company and there isn't anywhere near as much money going towards desktop stuff. Now, that's not me interpreting numbers or making up numbers or giving statistics. That is fact, plain and obvious, put out by them themselves.
Yeah, but they're not making a desktop environment anymore.
Yeah. It's not just the environment. We're going in circles here.
Yeah, say 10 guys made Mirror. Well, they don't need 10 of those guys anymore, do they? So they can go. I know it's not like one person does one job and then that's it. But I really don't think you need as many people when you can make use of all the upstream stuff that you don't have to do anymore. It's almost like, server virtualization in, Amazon. You don't need to have a bunch of server guys anymore sitting re-racking servers all the time because it becomes a commodity to you.
Right. Well, I think we've spent enough time on this, and especially given that the desktop is completely irrelevant now, the Linux desktop, given that Microsoft have put so much investment into the Linux subsystem for Windows. No, Windows subsystem for Linux. I never get that right. Because now SUSE and Fedora are going to be added as well as Ubuntu. So that, to me, is pretty much a nail in the coffin of desktop Linux. Or at least, maybe that's a bit harsh and a bit dramatic, but given that desktop computing generally is on the wane, and given that developers are a key part of the demographic of people who are actually using Linux on the desktop. Now they don't need desktop Linux anymore, don't even need Linux anymore, because you've got this subsystem acting as the kernel.
I mean, I'm formatting my hard drive as we speak.
Can you do that? Sorry. Surely, I mean, explain to me how this isn't a PR stunt just to make them look like they love Linux, because yes, they want people to use Microsoft products and Windowsy things, but who is going to not use the Linux distribution because they can run it on their Windows?
It's got nothing to do with Linux at all. It's to do with Mac. It's an attack against Mac because Apple has been eating their lunch for so long. Developers buying a MacBook and using all the tools that essentially is the same as what we would use, bash scripts, whatever, Git. And you can't do that on a Windows box because it's a terrible built environment, because if you're not using Visual Studio, then it's worthless. Yet all the new shiny stuff, all the containerization, all that sort of stuff, building your server farms out in Amazon, none of that's a Windows box. So you have to go along with whatever everybody else is using. So I think this is a complete attack against Apple. It's got nothing to do with a Linux box at all.
Linux is just the middleware in this case.
Yeah, it's a way to get a prompt, and they didn't like Cygwin. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way they're going to do this, they're going to have, what any MacBook user can go and do, which is things like, Vagrant, the stuff that actually matters to people, Puppet, Chef, all of those technologies that people like to use, but they want real desktop while they do it, because they're not going to use Linux desktops, right? They don't want to hamper their productivity, but then they've got a Unix-like environment where they can do all this cool stuff, and they can be web developers or administrators. Windows is just doing the same thing.
And the fun thing is, what would have been really useful is if they'd actually have it for the server, but they don't, because it's only for developers. So therefore, it's only on a Windows 10. So, if you could actually SSH into a Windows box without having to use some bolted together tool, it'd be brilliant. You actually might use a Windows server for something.
Who in their right mind would use a Windows server for anything?
People apparently like them. Sometimes.
Lots of people.
Apart from Exchange, I can't see any other reason.
Well, look, how else are you going to get all your NHS documents encrypted by a third party outside your company if you're not using Windows?
We weren't supposed to talk about this.
My girlfriend rocked up to work today. She doesn't work for the NHS. She works for a large other company. And she was like, some people have been having these weird windows come up and they haven't been able to access their files and things. I was like, uh-oh.
Have you got a minute to talk about Linux?
Yeah. And the company I work at, I've been working there for 2 years, never ever seen it. Halfway through the day today, an automated virus scan started. I've never seen it in 2 years.
Nice. Well, so it seems that it doesn't really affect Linux as far as you lot are concerned. I think it does, this adding Linux to Windows, but I think that it is going to eat a little bit of the desktop market share away from Linux, because I can picture dual booters, basically gamers, people who need Windows for certain other things like Exchange or whatever.
They're going to converge.
Yeah, and I can see them just booting into their Linux partition less and less because of this, and eventually just fucking it off.
What if it's the opposite, though? What if they say, I fucking wish I could use a system that actually has a decent command line like this thing has that I do my work in, if only it had a GUI too? Oh, wait, it does. Oh, maybe I'll give that a go.
I mean, while this might not be, from the top anyway, it's not an attack on desktop Linux. From some of their developers, it is. Like, I think you saw when I posted that tweet the other day into the Telegram channel, when some random guy up there, I can't remember his name, and I'm not going to start a legal suit either by mentioning his name, but it clearly did work for Microsoft. And it said, the year of the desktop Linux is here, it's just not on Linux, it's Windows.
Ooh.
And, like, I clicked on it, I was like, all right, I'll look, dickhead, right, I'll look, right? You start getting all wound up about it. So I clicked on it anyway, and it was like, it actually did work then. I was like, dude, that's not cool. You can't say things like that. That's like old Redmond. Like, that's not the
old
new
Redmond
stuff.
is very much there.
Yeah, I mean, it's still there at the core. Like, because it bled through so much that they... Like, you're seeing stuff like this, like, Microsoft Heart Linux. It's so lovely, lovely, lovely. And then you got some caveman on the other side. Man make fire, burn Linux. And you can see that attitude.
So they started off with Ubuntu. Obviously, as we've said, and everyone knows, it's one of the major Linux distributions on the server. SUSE, also quite a big enterprise distribution. Am I right in saying they've got Fedora because you can't have Red Hat, and that's the closest they could get?
They could have had CentOS if they really wanted.
Okay, yeah, fair. So my question was then, what do we think the fourth one will be?
Arch.
Solus.
Yeah, because Solus really works well, doesn't it, without a desktop environment?
Yeah, just wait till that black Humvee turns up outside your house, Ikey. A couple of lads get out with bats. It's like,
not again.
We suggest you give us the code.
I wouldn't go for it. I mean, I don't know, it's a little bit off topic, but to me, the reason why I'm doing everything is basically the desktop and home experience. For me to go on that. Not that I'd ever get the fucking chance, but I couldn't do it. For me, that would be compromising on my vision, and I just couldn't do it.
What, for £1 million you couldn't do it?
No, bollocks to him, because eventually I'll end up making my own million, and that's the way I see it, right? If I don't, when fuck it, I had a good time along the way.
Good man, Ikey.
I just couldn't do it. I'd be compromising, and there's certain things I just cannot compromise on. This would me be basically saying to everyone, do you know what, lads, the desktop's dead, let's pack it in. We've all had a good go of it, but Jesus, now, don't you like that Docker and Vagrant, huh? We're on Windows. No, I'm not doing that.
All right, well, that's enough Windows talk. Let's talk about someone who's actually really friendly to open source and free software, the Raspberry Pi Foundation.
Who?
Yeah, so I've put this as Raspberry Pi Foundation encourages kids to make their own Google Assistant in a box, which is deliberately incendiary. The bottom line is that their free magazine, well, their magazine that they subsidize, the Magpie, it's not free, is it? It's free to download the PDFs, but it's £4 or £5 to buy in a shop. And that this month came with a cardboard box. Well, it's a kit that you make a Google Assistant with a speaker and a button and some various hardware and stuff. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this was just to wind Phelim up, mostly. Like, what do you think about... I mean, it's aimed at kids, isn't it? I mean, they're basically trying to get kids into computing, and Mycroft has just shat the bed, basically. And so the only assistant that you could use on it, I mean, you could maybe get Alexa going, but they've done a deal with Google instead. And to me, it just... I can see why, but it doesn't feel good.
I can see why. I think it's great that they're getting kids involved in coding, and it's a cool project. It'd be awesome to build a box, press a button, talk to it, and have it do stuff for you. I mean, that's cool. But it kind of goes along with the food science books in the US schools that are sponsored by like Kraft and all the other food companies, where you're thinking, yeah, sure, a Mars a day is great for your health. You know, it's just wrong. It is really wrong to indoctrinate people that young. The fact that, yes, if you want to do voice recognition, you've got to use Google. I mean, if you're going to go to a job, yeah, you probably will end up using some API like that, but there's got to be a point where they just go, it's education. It shouldn't be based on one company's products.
Well, why not Amazon then with Alexa? It's not much better, is it?
Because the reason you don't go for the Alexa one is because with this, I'm sure I've read that you can have it not talk to the... Oh, I was about to say not talk to the Google servers, but now I think about it, how would it interpret your voice and everything?
With your local quantum computer.
I'm sure there was a local home version that you could like mess around with all your, your lights and what you want to play on your music, hi-fi, and all these kinds of things. But you didn't actually have to make it send everything through the Google servers.
Yeah, it's called Mycroft.
I mean, that's kind of the problem with this, like we hear about all these great things going on and these great fields, and you see something like the Magpie, as they're calling it, right? And you're like, that's really, really great. Oh, it's using Google. Well, what if somebody had done something? Oh, wait, no, we've had countless half-assed efforts that went nowhere. And I know it's hard to say. right? I know it's not nice to say. But we've had so many things that started out with, we're going to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, oh, well, Jesus, let you know this is actually really fucking hard. Right? Why did we try? And then they just don't really go anywhere because, and I'm not slagging Mycroft off, but it's not what it was made out to be when they first started. It's supposed to be artificial intelligence. Well, now it's a personal digital assistant, which sounds a little bit like pulpy. sometimes.
Yeah, and they still haven't delivered on their 2 crowdfunders. So,
yeah. I mean, I know it's hard for them. They probably didn't have the money, probably didn't have the resources, and went in eyes bigger than the belly. But it's just a shame because it would have been nice to say, well, we have this open solution. You know, it's what everyone in the industry is using. We have this, you know, distributed database that anyone can use, but we don't have that. And it said the companies win again. I don't know. I think I'm starting to turn into Phelan.
Good.
He's winning.
all right, well, let's do one more story about Google, and that is Fuchsia, their forthcoming, shall we say, mobile OS that is maybe possibly going to replace Android at some abstract point in the future.
It's whether it replaces Android and Chrome OS by being this, you're going to love it, convergent sort of operating system, the right once, run everywhere. But I suppose the sort of the major thing is that when we often refer to Android, we say, oh, it runs on the Linux kernel, isn't that lovely? But Google have made their own sort of microkernel, which is nothing to do with Linux, and they've entirely put it to one side. And so if this does slowly but surely usurp Android on your phones and tablets, we no longer get to say that, you know, Google's massive phone operating system runs on Linux, which is quite a sad state of affairs, really.
Yeah, but at least it's going to have a properly free kernel because it's going to be MIT licensed.
Ooh. Oh, lads, he went there.
He did go there. We can drag it back.
I was waiting for Phelan to come and give all his copyleft love.
I'm sorry, I'm too busy biting my own tongue off. It's clearly they just don't want anybody to chip in. It's a closed project, and they don't want any help, and they don't want anybody else to be involved, and they don't want to be involved with anyone else either. It just happens to be open code while they do it.
Because it's a business model that works for them, they can incorporate others' code if they need to, because it's a permissive compatible license. It will be an open source closed product.
Yay.
But isn't that better than a proprietary one?
No. Not really.
Really? Because at least you can have custom ROMs.
No, because this goes into the whole, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this goes into the whole open source versus free software thing. This will be open source. It will not be free software. And in this case, there is a distinct difference as well. And I hate myself for even saying that, and fuck off, Phelan.
Yeah, it's like go download that Darwin kernel and stick it on your Mac and see how far you get. Oh, great. I have an open kernel. Yay.
No, I think this is going to be more open than that, though. The whole thing is going to be...
Can you contribute to it? Because those Git repos you see are mirrors of internal repos. So
yeah, but the code is there. You can fork it. You can make your own custom ROMs.
You can fork it. That's cool. But are you going to get anything back upstream? I mean, that in itself is one of the major beauties of free software, that you can actually get your changes back up there for everyone to benefit.
But can you do that with Android now?
For the Linux kernel, yeah.
Yeah, but they're using the Linux kernel from about 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean... It's kind of the same model that they have now, where everyone is trailing behind on their snapshot, which they say goes out. So, no, it's not really that different, and that's not great either. Like, none of them are good.
But you can kind of see that if they were working on this for so long, that maybe their heart wasn't in updating to the latest one anyway. Yeah, I read it was 3.18 is in the Pixel. I would have thought that would have been up at 4 at least, but Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and the latest version of Lineage for... presumably our phones, well, I say our phones, you two, Phelan and Jesse, you've got 3s or something, 3T, Phelan. Yeah, well, that's a fairly new phone. I bet that's a 3-point-something kernel as well.
He says checking.
I mean, mine's a 3.1-something, I think.
I don't know where my phone is.
What a surprise.
3.18 for mine as well, actually.
Yeah, and that's ancient, isn't it?
Yeah. If only there was some sort of base layer that we could all have an open thing where we didn't have to worry about drivers and we could actually update those bloody components.
Exactly. That's why we should all move to BSD.
Well, I did hear that there's a new replicant release for a few, 5 or 6-year-old phones. So, there is hope yet, even if it's distant.
We'll fork Tizen and all will be good.
Oh, well, there's a new Tizen phone out as well. So, it's not totally dead yet, but it's all a bit grim,
kind
isn't
of
it?
is.
It is depressing. It really is, though.
It's like, lad, stop trying. It's kind of like when you see a drunk lad and he's up. Say if you've gone out and you're at the bar or something and you've just come back from outside and there's this one drunk lad and he's been trying to talk to this woman for about an hour and she's not interested. That to me is Tizen. It's on about his third drink by now. So.
Yeah, seems fair enough. All right, then. So this episode of Late Night Linux is sponsored by Entroware. And Entroware are a dedicated Linux computer manufacturer based in the UK. And they ship various computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate 1604 and 1704. And they've got a pretty decent range of laptops and a server and a desktop. And I've actually had my hands on one of their laptops over the last couple of weeks, the Ether, which is a 15.6-inch laptop with a 1080p screen, and it's brilliant. I really like it. I've had no trouble getting various Linux distros running on it, and I lent it to you for a bit, Jesse, and you were the same, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm very jealous of the 1080p screen. I now realise what I've been slumming it with on my various laptops, and it was a bit hard to give it back, if I'm honest.
Yep. And but as I said, they've got a range, so if you don't need a beautiful screen like that, you can save money and get a 720p one, or you can go right up to the high-end ones that have got dedicated graphics, and you can do all sorts of stuff with it, graphic design and 3D art and video editing, that kind of stuff. And they update their models frequently, so they've got the latest Kaby Lake processors at the moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned the desktops. They've got 3 desktops, one of which is the sexiest looking Nook type desktop that I've ever seen. The Aura, which is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, if you're not into laptops, have those as options as well.
Yeah, and they're shipped to the United Kingdom, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. So do check them out at entroware.com. And if you do buy one of their machines, do mention us at checkout. There's an option there. Tell them you heard about them at Late Night Linux. And let them know you heard about it here. So yeah, check out entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. And right, on to a bit of admin then. Thanks to everyone for supporting us with PayPal and Patreon. Much appreciated. You can go to latenightlinux.com/support to find out ways to do that. And latenightlinux.com/contact. There's all sorts of ways to get into contact with us. Twitter and Google+, and the Telegram group, which is latenightlinux.com/telegram. So, yeah, come and chat with us there. Ike's usually in there at night, and I'm in there drunk late at night sometimes. So, earlier in the week, we recorded an interview, which you're going to hear now. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Preetam D'Souza, who is the lead developer and founder of Maru. So, welcome to the show, Preetam.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no worries. So, what is Maru then? It's is it fair to say it's an AOSP-based ROM for a phone and a tablet that, when you plug it into a screen, becomes a Debian desktop with XFCE?
Yeah, boom. That's pretty much it. I like to keep it really simple and say, we're software that lets you use your phone as your PC. And I guess now, since we support tablets, I guess your mobile device is your PC.
Yeah, so it was originally the Nexus 5, but now it's the Nexus 7 as well.
Yep, that's right. We just released the Nexus 7 2013 with Wi-Fi. The beta for that we just released about a month ago.
Yeah, I've been trying it out, and you have as well, Jesse, haven't you?
Yeah, it's good to have it on a device that I own. So previously, I think I stole Joe's spare Nexus 5 and had a mess around. I was really, really impressed with the original one. And yeah, it just means that I can have it on a device that, let's say I would normally not, well, my current phone I haven't flashed with anything else. So it's nice to be able to have it on one that I would deem as a more portable device, use it on the train, go to my girlfriend's, flash it up. I've got Linux at hers, which is fantastic. Yeah,
I mean, that's actually one of the reasons why I really wanted to get it on the Nexus 7. Because, a lot of people, you got your main phone, you probably don't want to try some Flash Maru and try something new that you don't know if you're going to like it or not. But at least with the Nexus 7, since it's a pretty popular Android tablet, a lot of people just have these things lying around the house. So it's a great gateway device to get in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on that topic, is there a plan for more devices? You know, are you looking at the Nexus line preliminary? You know, sort of. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I mean, Nexus really is the best. Like I think I mentioned this last time I was on the show, but the Nexus line of devices is really, really open with their software. Google's really friendly with those devices. They give us the device drivers and some of the code we need to bring up Maru on those devices, so it makes it a lot easier. The goal really is to support all of the Nexus devices. So we have the Nexus 5, the Nexus 7 right now. I'd really like to get it on the Nexus 5X and the Nexus 6P. I actually have the 5X myself. That's my main phone. And I'm actually running Maru on the 5X right now. It's not completely ready for release just yet, but it's working. Actually, the exciting thing about the Nexus 5X and some of the new Nexus devices is that they don't have HDMI output, which we're actually using the Nexus 5 and Nexus 7. So that's kind of pushed me and pushed the project to look at other ways of doing display streaming. So with the alpha and the beta for the alpha for the Nexus 5X, we actually have a very early patch set for allowing wireless streaming for Maru, which is pretty exciting.
Oh, what protocol are you using for that then?
Yeah, so what I've actually done for that patch set is I found a way to hook into Android's display stack. So we can actually work across, well, theoretically, we should be able to work across any protocol that's supported by Android. That means we can do really, really cool things like work with Chromecast, work with Display Link, I believe it's called, which does the USB transmission over, which is HDMI transmission over USB.
Oh, cool. One thing that occurred to me with now you've got it on a tablet is at the moment you can only get the Debian desktop on an external screen, but it would be nice if you could have it on the screen of the tablet because it kind of doesn't make sense on a Nexus 5. It's too small. But are there any plans to make it so that you can do it with just the device on its own?
Yeah, so as a built-in feature of Maru, there's actually an issue on GitHub open on that, I think. But the way people are doing it, people are actually doing this right now, and the way they're doing it is they're just setting up like X11 VNC on the desktop, and then they're just downloading a VNC app on the Android side, and they're streaming the desktop directly on the mobile device display itself.
Because it will run in the background, won't it, without a screen attached?
Yeah, now that was released, I believe, a couple of releases after we spoke, actually, last time.
Oh, right. And so is it still just you working on it then?
No. So fortunately, we have a few more developers in the community who are starting to chip in. I'm still doing most of the core work for Maru OS, but we're starting to get people who are contributing to the ports now, because obviously I don't have all the devices. So, with 0.4, the release we just had last month, we have work from 2 developers in the community. This is the first release that's featuring code from the community, which is really awesome. I'm really proud of that. The Nexus 7 actually was taken care of by one of our community developers. His name is Tyler. He did a great job there. And one of our other developers who's from India is actually he's merging in all the latest security patches from upstream AOSP. Which is pretty cool.
So you mentioned 0.4 there. I just wonder whether you have like a target or a blueprint for what you expect to see at version 1.0, because we often see some of these certainly Linux applications sort of go from 0.4 to 0.5 to 0.6 and never quite get to 1. And I'm wondering whether you have some sort of target you're aiming for.
Yeah. For one, I mean,
that sounds like a no.
Yeah. It's kind of arbitrary. I just increment the version number, honestly. Yeah, I don't think so. At least I haven't planned for a version 1.0 release or whatever. It's just kind of one of those things, I guess, when you feel like it's ready, it's ready.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about is the end of life of these devices. Now, officially, the Nexus 7 definitely is end of life, no more security patches. Yeah, you said that Google are pretty good with the code for these devices, the drivers and stuff, but how does end of life affect that and custom ROMs?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I've had to deal with this stuff because it turns out that the Nexus 5 itself was end of life in October, just this past October. So basically, the way I think about it is that there are kind of, when a device is end of life, we basically don't get any more security patches or updates for the device-specific components of the ROM. So, for example, with the Nexus 7 and now the Nexus 5, we will not get security updates for the binary drivers that are required in the ROM. So, like Qualcomm drivers, etc. We also will not get kernel updates because the Nexus 5 is using a 3.4 kernel, and Android has since moved far ahead now. However, we still do get the core platform updates because the core updates are general, right? They're just for the main version of Android, whatever version of Android it is right now, and so those apply to all devices. So in terms of what this means for Maru is basically, if you're using an end-of-life device, you will not be receiving kernel updates or device driver updates, but you will be still receiving core platform updates.
So you focus on the Nexus devices because of the access to drivers. What would another manufacturer have to do to be able to allow you to go onto their phone? I'm thinking more sort of along the lines of the OnePlus, where they're very friendly with the open side of things with Lineage. What would they need to do to allow you to run it on theirs?
Yeah, they should really look at how Nexus does it as the case study for that, because it's not too hard to do. Basically, what we need is we need a device repository to kind of start out with. This is kind of the device configuration code that we need to build a ROM for a device. So the Nexus, basically in the Nexus 5, all the Nexus devices, there's an upstream device configuration repository that we can fork and use as the basis for the ROM. We need that, and we need the device drivers. And for the device drivers for Nexus, it's basically just a zip file that we extract into our development environment, and all of those blobs kind of get pulled in to our build.
Right.
You mentioned kernel updates and not getting any. I mean, presumably you need certain kernels to use the features for the containerization that you use.
Yeah, that's right. So it turns out that pretty much all of the Nexus devices, I believe, have a recent enough kernel that supports namespacing features, which we need for the containerization. 3.4 is what we're using on Nexus 5 and Nexus 7. It doesn't have all of the namespace support, but it does have the parts that we need, namely process namespaces and network namespaces. All of those things work, but some of the other namespacing features like I think user namespaces, and those don't work on 3.4. So we actually have to go ahead and patch some of those things out to make the kernels build.
Because is it LexD and LexC that you use?
Yeah, we use LXC. Yep. If you go to our GitHub repo, you can see the repository that we use for LXC. We use a fork of LXC. We're on version 1.0.9 right now, and the cool thing about that is that we've kind of broken that out into modular piece. So if you have another ROM and you kind of want to tinker with LXC, actually I think the folks who are working on NetHunter, the NetHunter ROM, are actually forking our LXC repository right now to potentially add containerization for their ROM too.
That sounds like a lot of forks. Do we need so many forks, or can't people work together?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you contribute back up, but
no, it doesn't always work out that way, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think last time we asked you, I say last time we spoke to you on Linux Luddites, but there's no Google Play services when you install Maru. Is that intentional? Is there a way of installing them that's easy? Or is it just a case of that is such a big headache, we're going to leave it as that, and F-Droid is perfectly fine?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of kind of legal things around the Google Play Store. We have to get officially licensed from Google in order to ship those on our devices. It's kind of a big process. So, it's fairly easy to get the Play Store now. To restore the Play Store to your device using something like OpenGApps. We actually have a guide on our forums talking about how you can easily get the Play Store installed. It doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to the stage where you can flash Maru, you should be able to flash the Google apps, no problem. I mean, I've done it before. Yeah,
Exactly.
Even you've done it. Okay, right. Must be easy.
Yeah, and that's actually something I've been trying to make easier. We have the easy installers available right now. I don't know, when you guys installed Maru, did you use the installer or did you use the flashable update zip?
I just used Twerp.
Use Twerp, okay. Yeah, so we actually offer easy installers for all platforms that can do the install really quickly in just like in like 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm trying to kind of automate as many steps as possible because technical folks like you, it's really easy. But a lot of our users actually, over 50% of our users are using those easy installers. So people who don't have as much experience flashing ROMs and stuff like that.
Is that just bundled ADB and fastboot, basically?
Yeah, bundled ADB, fastboot, and then platform scripts. Yep.
All right.
So it's Android 6, well, Android 6.0.1 on the Nexus 7. I assume same for the Nexus 5.
Mm-hmm.
What is involved with moving up to the latest version of Android? Because we're on 7 point something.
Yep, that's right.
Is there just a case of keeping your part over the top and changing the base out, or is it like a complete rebuild from the bottom up? Is it a huge headache that you're putting off for ages, or are you about to step up to that next level to the newest Android?
Yeah, I definitely want to get to the newest Android because it makes my life easier. Because with all the new security patches and stuff coming in, they first show up on the Android N branches, the 7.0 branches. So it makes actually management of the project a lot easier. It is one of those things that you do put off though, because it honestly is a pain in the ass, and it really depends. It depends on each version, because sometimes it's really easy. If there are no breaking API changes inside the system, and because Maru is a custom ROM, we actually use some of the internal system APIs, and those are open to change, unlike the public-facing application API. So if it so happens that something changes, then we have to go and maybe have to re-architect a different part of Maru. So it can be challenging. I will say that I've already started tinkering with Android N, and it doesn't look too bad. So that's definitely one of the things coming up.
But isn't it a case of like you've got all the stability, you get it to the point where it's all working perfectly, and then you have to completely start again?
Boom! Yeah, bingo. That's really what the challenge is, because every time we move up, we have to stability test it again.
And so there was obviously recently in the news the dropping of Ubuntu Touch. Do you think that means for you that there's no confidence in something which is sort of I want to get around the word convergent, but it's going to have to be there. So a convergent device, or do you think that means that more people are going to move over to Maru because that's one of the one of the options they have now? Where do you see the fall of Ubuntu Touch?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we'll see a lot more people coming into Maru OS right now, which is great for the project, because I still think that there is definitely a use case for convergence like software. And the thing is, I never actually thought of Ubuntu Touch as a real competitor to Maru OS, just because the way we're going about it is so different, right? With Ubuntu Touch, they're trying to push their platform, Ubuntu, on both the mobile side and the desktop side. Whereas with Maru OS, we're really trying to take the best of both worlds, the best of Android and the best of Linux, and combine them in a way that gives more value. So I think we have our own separate area of the spectrum, and I think now that Ubuntu has dropped the ball on their product, I think we're gonna start grabbing some more of their users, which is pretty cool.
And I suppose Samsung as well is kind of vindication, because it looks like they're trying to do it as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, like since we launched Maru, there's been so many different attempts to make this happen. At least I'm hearing about it more in the news and stuff like that, which is really cool. So
at the moment, you can only use XFCE, right? I mean, that was the case last time, and from what I can see, you can't log out and log into a different desktop environment. Are there any plans to add that feature?
I would like to, but there's so many things that I'm working on right now that that one kind of isn't high on my priority list right now. Because
Well, it wouldn't be for me because I use XFCE. I'm sitting here looking at it now. And Debian with XFCE seems like a pretty good combination to me. But I just know there's some people who think that XFCE is a bit old school and they would want GNOME or KDE. I know Phelan would want KDE.
It's maybe not wanting GNOME or KDE or something, but something lighter even. Because I mean, the Nexus 7 is a 2013 tablet that's 4 years old now. It's not exactly the fastest processor and the biggest amount of RAM and all that. So potentially having something that's even more lightweight, so you're not using the battery and all these sorts of things. There are those thoughts to be had.
Yeah, definitely. I think XFCE works fairly well, actually, in terms of like consumption and battery usage. It seems to be pretty good. We actually made some improvements when we moved to Marshmallow and stuff like that. We're actually like tuning down the frequency of the cores better than it was when with the 0.2 versions earlier on. So battery usage is a lot better, even when you're using the desktop.
How are you managing your build backend? Is it all funded by yourself now at the moment?
Yeah, it is. So I mean, we have a little bit of cash flow coming in from affiliate marketing because we there are certain accessories. If you go to our website and you can check out accessories, because you need like a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, and you need a SIM port adapter to get your devices connected to your display to really make use of Maru OS. And what we do is we kind of get a little bit of kickback from the sales of those accessories. So we make just enough basically to cover the the server costs.
I've got a suggestion for you, right? What you want to do is find someone who makes an app or software and then put that into the binary so that when someone loads it on their phone, you get the app straight away and then they can pay you money. And in fact, you can have loads of apps.
Yeah, make sure you can't remove them either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, keep them like really fixed in there hard, and people would really appreciate that. They really thank you for that.
Yeah, maybe some Microsoft stuff. I heard that went well for Cyanogen. Yeah.
I do have to say that it's nice that when you load Maru, there's like half a dozen apps. There's like nothing at all, a clock and a settings. It's absolutely fantastic that it's so bare bones.
I mean, that was my goal. I mean, I built, again, like one of the key users for Maru OS is myself. So I kind of built it for myself. And one of the things I was really tired with seeing is, when I get a Nexus 5 or Nexus 5X stock from Google, it's like stuffed with all the Google applications, and I can't even delete them. So they're eating up all the space, and I just don't want to see them there anymore. So when I built Maru, I said, you know what, it's going to be completely bare bones. It's going to be basically only the apps you need to have the most basic smartphone experience. And from then on, you go ahead and customize it. You install what you want. But Maru OS shouldn't be telling you what to install and what not to install.
Yeah, definitely. So any plans to get it on a device sold as new then?
A device sold as new?
Well, as in like working with, an OEM.
Yeah. Actually, so a lot of the time I spent in 2016 was not just on the open source project, but I think I mentioned this at the end of our last conversation, but that I had quit my job to work on Maru OS.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was spending a lot of my time doing kind of, business development and trying to see what would be possible. Like, could I possibly get Maru OS shipped on a new device stock so that users would kind of have that experience right out of the package. And I talked to several people. There's smaller OEM manufacturers. There's one in Italy, a couple in Europe actually. And we got to the point where we had the deals ready, but they never ended up really being fruitful in the end. So nothing really happened in 2016. There's still a couple open. The conversations are still open, but nothing conclusive yet.
Yeah, because it seems like that is a more reliable income stream, revenue stream than Amazon, which you're using at the moment, because Amazon do have a tendency to just pull the plug on people. That's
right. Yeah. I mean, again, I really wanted to make Maru's growth sustainable. That was important to me. So I did all this stuff, and it's interesting. A lot of people are really interested in the idea of shipping Maru OS stock on devices. We just need to work out some of the pricing details and the licensing details and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I hope it works out, and I hope that you can get some money coming in and maybe hire some more devs and accelerate development on it, because it's a really good platform at the moment. It's to me, it's what Canonical should have been doing with Ubuntu. You've got Android, you've got Debian, or in their case, there's no reason why it couldn't be Ubuntu. Or that's actually, I should ask you that. There's no reason why someone who took this code and ported it to another device that couldn't use Fedora or Ubuntu or anything like that, right?
That's absolutely right. If there are any listeners who are interested in Maru OS, you don't like Debian, you want some other desktop distro, like please check out our GitHub page. There's a repository called Blueprints there. And I've kind of structured it in such a way that you can add your distro, looking at the Debian canonical version that we're using right now, as a template. So it should be fairly easy to do. I believe someone in our community actually already has some version of Ubuntu running on it. So it's out there in the wilds.
Yeah, people are going to say Arch. I want Arch running on it. That's I reckon one of the kind of person who would want to do this probably would want Arch. I reckon. Yeah,
as long as it's especially if it's Debian based, I think 60 to 75% of the work is already done because you can leverage what we're doing right now. The way we hook on is that we actually have I've made a Debian package that you can install on top of a fresh Debian install that will kind of Maruize it, so to speak, and let it communicate with the ROM. So if you have any Debian-based distro, you can kind of leverage that.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, it was great to speak to you again, and hopefully have you back on at some point in the future.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Well, that was really cool to catch up with Preetam, and I've got so much faith in Maru as a project, Maru OS. I keep being off-brand and calling it Maru. I think that he's trying to call it Maru OS for SEO reasons these days. But it's a really cool project, and I think that that is the future of convergence. I'm not wrong, am I?
No, I haven't messed around with it on the Nexus 7 and previously on your Nexus 5. It's nice having a screen that you can touch and swipe and do all the things you want to do on a normal Android device, but then also it just flashes onto a full-size monitor or TV, and you've got your standard Linux desktop and, a bit of Bluetooth, and you've got all your keyboard and mouse and things. So it's nice. And the fact that people are contributing, and he's, got more devices looking like they're setting up. I think we're talking to Mofair about him going to Mobile World Congress or one of these other sort of developers type areas, and it sounds like a lot of people are really interested there. So it's slowly but surely getting there, and it just needs to have a big break, and I think it'll be very popular.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we would actually just make it work from my phone. I think I don't think that's too selfish to ask.
Well, send him on, and he might.
But now that you're on first name terms with him, I'm sure he'll sort it out.
Oh, totally.
Well, you never know. There does seem to be interest in porting it to other devices, and the OnePlus phones are very popular with people who like custom ROMs and stuff, so fingers crossed. But I suppose we better wrap it up then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and don't forget to check out Linux Action News if you want to hear more of me. But in the meantime, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Jesse.
And I'm Saliki.
See you later.